Hey guys, it's Rachel. It's Thankful Thursday. I actually just made a video, okay, but the quality of it was really poor. It was on the webcam for my computer, so I'm using this one. So again, I want to apologise for the quality of my video because I keep forgetting to buy a new webcam, and then I come to make my video this week and I always manage to forget, so I need to like write it down, but like remember where I've written it down so that I don't forget. So this week we're on week 2 of a 6-week rota that Tracy put together for us, and we are looking today at contemplation. Last week we looked at pre-contemplation, and we specifically kind of focused on the stage of denial, others being concerned and us not really having an understanding of where we're at. Whereas today we're going to be looking at contemplation. I'm just going to highlight what that kind of means really, and then kind of go on to discuss it. First of all, there is some form of realization of what is happening and the impact that the eating disorder is having on you. When I talk about the impact of an eating disorder, I am talking spiritually, I'm talking emotionally, psychologically, mentally, and of course physically. And what I do want to say here, because I feel it's important, that a big part of eating disorders is denial, and especially denial of the severity of what you're doing to yourself. And when you're engaging in behaviours, you're actually engaging things that are putting you at risk. It's something that is very easy to forget. It's very easy for the sufferers, and it's very easy for treatment teams to underestimate the impact that such behaviours which surround eating disorders, starving, binging, purging, active abuse, overexercise, I could go on and on, there's a whole range of them, that to realise that it's killing you is actually a very difficult task, and probably isn't going to come too much later. So what I want to say now is that you can still be at the point of contemplation and recovery and not fully realise the extent of the damage that you're doing to yourself. But what I do want to highlight that is, regardless of weight, that eating disorders are damaging. End of. It doesn't matter what end of the spectrum you're at. And yes, there's highlighted cases where people are incredibly emaciated or incredibly overweight, and at that point perhaps there is more risk. However, you know, you can be a normal size, you can be in recovery and suffer a heart attack. So I just kind of wanted to realistically kind of help you understand that at this point it might be very difficult for you to realise that your eating disorder is harming you. And if you are aware of how it's harming you or killing you, there might actually be further distress. And I know that I very much realised what I was doing to myself quite early on, and it did begin to distress me. So the way I dealt with the distress was by using more behaviours. So sometimes this period of contemplation can actually be one of the most difficult for you, and in some ways one of the most vulnerable stages for you in all of your kind of sickness and recovery, because it can be very difficult to realise what you've done or are doing, and that can be something then that you run into your disorder to stop you from having to think about that. So we've got that stage, and we're beginning hopefully by here to think about the prospects of a life without an eating disorder. A whole life, or being completely without the eating disorder at this point, isn't particularly something you may be able to do, but it's a point where you can start to weigh up kind of where you're at and address kind of, you know, what has been going on, what has the eating disorder done for me. What I will say is, without invalidating people's feelings here, because a lot of people do feel, and this isn't just with eating disorders, self-harm, addictions, that they're actually helping themselves. And I hesitate to say this because I don't want it to be misconstrued, but some people's experiences they believe that they wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for their behaviours, that engaging in the eating disorder, although it is killing them, is actively keeping them alive. And there is a big contradiction there, and it's something I hesitate to say, because what I would far rather do in this video is emphasise the positivities of recovery and the negativities of staying ill, but I also don't want to invalidate people who are at a very vulnerable stage. So it is reasonable at this point to still feel as though you're getting something out of your eating disorder. What I will say is that those thoughts, for the most part, are distorted. One of my big things was, I will only be successful academically if I'm anorexic. I don't even know where that came from, but it was such a firm held belief that every time I studied, it was kind of like, I won't achieve. If I'm eating and being normal, I won't achieve. And so I had this kind of ingrained into my head, and it meant challenging those thoughts. Okay, so a lot of those thoughts and beliefs that you've got, although they're very real to you and they're what you're feeling, bear in mind that for the most part they're very distorted. And if you can allow yourself to consider that they are distorted, that's a huge step in itself. One of the most painful experiences I feel that people come face to face with during the contemplation stage is treatment. I live in the UK, so my experiences here are predominantly based on that, but I know that it's not, you know, much different elsewhere over the world. So at this point of contemplation, obviously what you're deciding to do is to think about treatment. Okay, my initial stages with me, I was put in treatment like very early, but you know, my family and friends have made a huge difference. So initially it may be just letting family and friends in to try and support you. If that doesn't feel enough, which more often than not with eating disorders, most often they're long-standing, not just long-standing in the sense that people live with them for a long time, but that they develop and they tend to stay with people. They don't tend to be things that a person dips into and then dips out of. I do believe that there is an element of that, but for a lot of people they need repeated treatment and repeated intervention, quite a long period of therapy to help them deal with it, because the process of recovery itself is so long, because you've got the whole behavioural aspect to deal with. So you've actually got to get the person eating healthily, eating normally, regularly, dealing with other behaviours, and weight restoration or weight loss, or whichever way it is that is working, weight maintenance either. But allow the body needs time to heal, the physical self needs time to heal before you can maybe then, you know, deal with what was underneath that. So when you're then perhaps looking at treatment, what I've experienced and what I know a lot of people have experienced is you've then been rejected by services. If your eating disorder is already convincing you that you're not sick enough, that you don't deserve treatment, you're not worthy of treatment, you clearly need to be more sick to get help, treatment in that regard can actually just balloon that issue and send you away thinking, well, I can't be that ill, and it penetrates deeper at that denial and pushes it even deeper in you. And unfortunately there isn't, in my area there is an EDU, but they take people from all over the country, and they hesitate to even treat one of my best friends who lived down like 5 minutes down the road. And you know, she couldn't get treatment. She did eventually get treatment, but I don't even want to try and go into the kind of state she was in. But it is known that the eating disorder unit near to me, that you're basically literally on death's door in a wheelchair, damn near needing to be in intensive care because of what your eating disorder has done to you. Predominantly anorexia, of course, but obviously a lot of people with severe anorexia also have bulimia, or other attributes to their disorder. But that's basically, and all that it says to me, says to other people with an eating disorder, is you need to weigh like 4 stone until you are worthy of, till you deserve help. And that might be a distorted thought, that might not actually be the case, but seeking treatment can quite often can force that more into you. And so what I want to say in this video now is that when you reach out for help, if you are rejected, that doesn't mean that you're not ill enough. And I just think that's a really, really, really important point to put across. It doesn't mean that you don't deserve treatment. It means that services the world over are limited when it comes to dealing with eating disorders, when it comes to dealing with mental health. End of. Even in the private sector, they're limited. And so there's just such a demand on services, okay? So if you're being rejected by services or considering services and it's taking a really long time, that doesn't mean you don't deserve help, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to get help, and it doesn't mean that you're not sick enough. What you can do in that point, if you're waiting for treatment, is actually work on some small little changes you can make yourself, that you can work with your family or your friends or your roommates or whoever it is who surrounds you. I had a friend who said that something she did the other week is picked up her horse riding again. So she now has a horse, and she said that basically if she's to be able to care for her horse properly and to feed it and to look after it, she needs to not use money binging and purging, basically. And that, without engaging services, maybe a therapist suggested it, but she's been able to go and do that herself, and that's her time out. Something I do is my writing. I will make an effort to sit down and write. So there are things that we can do that are not necessarily changing the eating disorder behaviours or other behaviours we have, but are preparing us, are laying like a foundation for us to start to do that. What I will also say is that you are more than capable of changing your behaviours without intensive help. Sometimes we get to a point where we're not able to. But I was very, very poorly when I did my real recovery. I did that from home with a huge amount, and I didn't particularly work with a therapist because I felt like it was something I needed to do. I needed to get my head into gear. I needed to put food in my mouth. I needed to do that. So quite often when we're very determined and in that point of contemplation, we can say, do you know what? I don't completely believe I can do this, but I'm going to give it a shot and I'm going to have a go. So that then when you do enter treatment, that there is that willingness there already. Another big thing that stops people from entering recovery is this fear of failure. An eating disorder just reaffirms that all the time, so you constantly feel like a failure, nothing's ever good enough. And so when that schema is completely activated, the idea of going into recovery is another area of change in which you can fail at. And so it becomes very, very difficult. What I will say is quite an interesting observation to me is that a lot of people I know who've recovered from an eating disorder kind of just went at it like that, and I do wonder how much that fear of failure actually motivated them in a positive way. And that's the thing, you've got this energy, you're using energy to destroy yourself. If you put that positively, I mean, you know, there's nothing you can't do. And maybe that sounds like a dreamer's and an idealistic way to think, but there actually isn't. And you know, the people watching these videos are capable and often very determined, very strong, very intelligent, creative, amazing people who have so much to give, have so much to give the world, to give themselves, to give their family, their friends, whatever it is. And it's about harnessing some of that and holding on to that and saying, do you know what, I don't completely believe that, but my best friend does. And maybe she's worth listening to. And so there is this fear of failure, and often if we slip, we feel like we failed. And I think that it's important to feel that when we slip, that we do feel a bit disappointed in ourselves, but not to the point that we absolutely beat ourselves up. And I think that you've got to find that balance, and that takes practice, because sometimes we beat ourselves up so much we end up using behaviours more. But it's about saying, this is what's happened. What can I do now to pick up and move on? And we go again, and we take each moment at a time. And obviously the most sort of clear thing really is people question how they're going to cope without their eating disorder. It seems like a very scary thing that somebody could take this from you. I will say that nobody takes this from you. I wish that somebody could take this from you. I wouldn't wish an eating disorder on anyone. However, I did learn that in treatment, no matter how much help I got, no matter how much I was forced to eat or gain weight or do whatever, the eating disorder was still there. So the eating disorder needs to be treated physically and actively, in the sense of re-establishing a healthy eating pattern and weight maintenance, restoration, etc. But you also need to be dealing with what's underneath that. I've spent 10 years in therapy, okay? And I've dealt with my eating disorder. I dealt with that a long time ago, and that isn't to say I haven't had moments of relapse, but I've pretty much been well now. For my last relapse was 2007, okay, and I'm still in the process of unlocking some of what led to this. And you know, the most obvious was maybe abuse. A lot of people who've been through eating disorders have suffered, or not abuse, or some sort of trauma, something that was impacted them as a child, a difficult relationship with a parent, whatever. And I'm still working on some, you know, I've got issues surrounding rejection and, you know, feeling like I'm not good enough and that people are going to leave me because I'm not good enough, and that I should be this or I should be that, or I should show this or I should give that. And I have to just ease up on myself. And you're stronger than you think. And so on the how will I cope without it, is it worth it, you know, am I going to fail, should I do this, do it. Because it'll be the best decision you ever make in your life. And it might not feel like it for a really fucking long time. And I swear to God, for a really, really long time, it might not. But you will reap the benefits. And there is a plethora of videos on this channel that highlight that. A million blogs that are linked to the channel. I write a blog, you know, Ariel has a blog. A number of people here have a blog. I think Felicia's just started one. So there are people, you know, doing amazing things. Tara climbs Kilimanjaro. Can I pronounce that correctly? You know, so that there is hope. And if you can't completely trust in yourself, try and trust in us a little bit, because we have been there and we've come through it and we're healed. And we still have issues to work on and things to do and work to do, but we've recovered from our eating disorder. Okay, guys, I'm going to leave it now because I've rambled on for ages, and I hope that's been some help. Love you guys, and I'll speak to you next week. Okay, bye.